The College Football Hall of Fame is a wonderful idea. Love college football. There are a lot of good players and good coaches and good people who have come through this sport, and they deserve to be recognized. We've got no issue with that, right? Right. Okay. We don't have a problem with the Hall of Fame. We don't have a problem with having a very high bar for which you have to clear to get into that Hall of Fame. No problem with any of that. However, I do have a big problem with what the College Football Hall of Fame has become, not as an entity. Love it and love the folks down there. We've done our show from there twice, so I love all that. It's not them. The fine folks and the staff down there notwithstanding, it's the criteria that, for whatever reason, was constructed in order to make it into that thing. That's the problem. It's another reminder. This week was another reminder that the rules are a disaster. So the nominees for this year's class got, I guess, announced this week. Saban and Meyer headline the class. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer. Something in me tells me they'll both get in. But it's not about who's going to make it. That's the crime of this all. We should be celebrating. I should be celebrating and enjoying names from the past who are being enshrined, rightfully so, in the College Football Hall of Fame. But instead, it's this punch to the chest cavity again of how screwed up the voting process is and the admissions process is for the College Football Hall of Fame. It started last year. It started last year because you start to realize Mike Leach passed away, and Mike Leach will never be a Hall of Famer. As the rules are currently constructed, he'll never be a Hall of Famer. And he's not alone. You know who else is ineligible for the Hall of Fame? College Football Hall of Fame, based on the current criteria. Howard Schnellenberger, who truthfully I assumed was in until yesterday when that was brought to my attention. Pete Carroll at USC. Stetson Bennett just made history at Georgia. Not going to get in. Nick Chubb, top 5 SEC rusher of all time. Sorry. Trevor Lawrence, Clemson. Nope. Colt Brennan put Hawaii football on the map for a generation. No. Julio Jones at Alabama. Who? Never heard of him. Probably going to be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Not good enough for the College Football Hall of Fame. Why? Because of stupid rules. That's why. That was borderline groping. I need to not do that. I appreciate rules. It may sound to you, if you don't know me any better, like I'm someone who likes to constantly lower the bar, and he must be one of those people who likes to bend the rules. Hey, if you can't throw strikes, let's just widen the plate. That's not me at all. That's not me at all. Quite the opposite. But I am a proponent of establishing logic-based rules and then never budging on them. And if you're not good enough, you're not good enough. So it should be the same way with the College Football Hall of Fame. If you're not good enough, you're not good enough. Here's the thing, though. A lot of those dudes are good enough. I think most of you would agree with me on this. I didn't even know how deep it went. Like I said, I knew we had a Leach problem last year because Mike Leach passed away, and then all of a sudden you realized, wait, he can't be in the Hall of Fame. Why? He's never going to be eligible for the Hall of Fame. Why? And then, and only then, I think a large majority of us started to realize, oh, there are guidelines here. Like, unlike Major League Baseball, a pro sport, college football decided to put hard metrics as barometers on inclusion into the College Football Hall of Fame. And as a result, a lot of people who clearly should be in the College Football Hall of Fame aren't going to be in unless we get something done about this, and I'll address that in a second. So, Grishy, interim producer Grishy is here because Jesse irresponsibly is on his honeymoon. Just the audacity, by the way. The audacity. We kid because we care. Do we have the criteria? That's what I was about to ask you before I got sidetracked with Jesse bashing. The criteria. Listen to this if you're listening on podcast. Players must have been selected first-team All-American. A player becomes eligible 10 years after their last college football season. I got no problem with that. But they have to have been a first-team All-American. So I want you to think about that for a second. Post-football record as a citizen is also weighed, so, don't let us find bodies in your trunk. And also, they must have played their last year of college football within the last 50 years. That's for a player. So Nick Chubb, for example, one of the best we've ever seen, one of the best to ever do it in the history of the SEC, but he happens to exist in the same time period as other really good running backs, and so Nick Chubb wasn't a first-team All-American. And because of that, you're not getting in, Nick Chubb. That's the long and short of it. For coaches, though, I've got an even bigger beef because for coaches, there are two rules I got a problem with. One, you have to have coached at least 10 years. Goodbye, Pete Carroll. And number two, you have to have at least a 60% winning percentage over the course of your career. I think if you don't know the sport of college football any better, you may listen to that and you may say, well, what's wrong with that? 60%? That's all? That's all you have to win? Yeah, that's all you have to win. Here's the problem. Not every program's Texas. Not every program's Clemson. Not every program's Michigan. We very clearly understand, all of us watching or listening here, we all understand this is not the NFL. Everything is not built in college sports to push everyone to the middle. College football wasn't built to be college football. The NFL, think about pro sports. The NFL exists for one thing and one thing only, so it can be a professional football league. Major League Baseball exists so it can be a professional baseball league, NBA, basketball, etc. And that's all. There's nothing else to it. It's just that. And so they've got 28, 30, 32, 34 teams in pro cities, and they have, in most sports, salary structures, and then they have a draft structure, and everything's built with competitive balance in mind, and there's nothing else. College sports used to just be universities, and some of them are 900 years old, and some of them are like 90 years old, and that's a stretch, but you get what I'm saying there. Some of them decided to have athletic departments, and some didn't, and the point is, it's so discombobulated, and it's so unbalanced, and there's so many more teams in college sports. Nothing is built on the foundation of equality in competitive college athletics. Never has been, financially or competitively, and those two go hand in hand. So in college sports, you have haves and you have have-nots. And the have programs have palatial facilities, and they've got multiple donors who write seven-figure plus checks per year, and you get to basically buy whatever you want to, up to and including players now. And then there are other places where they make sure you only use one paper plate per day in the mess hall because they're broke. If you coach at the latter and not the former, it's really hard to win 60% of your games. So I ask you this way. What if I popped Nick Saban down here in Nashville, Tennessee? Saban, for whatever reason, just coaches Vanderbilt his whole career. How they doing? I think Nick Saban's the best to ever do it. How they doing? Maybe 60%, maybe not. My point there is, if pro sports don't even have these hard and fast metrics, where it would make sense because everything is roughly on the up and equal there, why would college football be dumb enough to box themselves in by putting these numbers, not arbitrary, hard and fast numbers in? It's unnecessary. We can look at a coach. We can look at Mike Leach and see he's a 59.7% winning percentage guy. That's the actual number, by the way. Like needed one more game. He passes away, his interim wins the bowl game. Had that been Leach, he'd be at that 60% threshold. You're telling me that's the difference in that dude being a Hall of Famer and not being a Hall of Famer. Mike blanking Leach, not a Hall of Famer. Tell me the story of offense in college football since the 2000s without including Mike Leach. You can't do it, but he's not a Hall of Famer because someone on a calculator decided he's not. And so Pete Carroll's at USC. Tell me the story of college football in the 2000s without Pete Carroll. You can't. But because he wasn't at USC 10 years, because he was actually good enough to become an NFL head coach, he's not good enough for the College Football Hall of Fame. That's insane. So here's the thing about rules. The rules for the College Football Hall of Fame were not discovered on stone tablets somewhere. We don't just have to blindly adhere to them. You made them. The College Football Hall of Fame is not even that old. It hasn't been around that long. So the group that sat around a table and decided on this nonsense still has the power to undo it. I would humbly suggest you need to exercise that power, because I don't know many people in the room who look at Mike Leach, for example, and say, yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing we kept him out of there. What are we doing? If you've got a Hall of Fame and the criteria does not warrant Mike Leach getting into the Hall of Fame, you don't really have a College Football Hall of Fame. You've just got a random collection of people. That's what you have. So, negative start to the show tonight, hopefully a positive ending, because I'm not even sure this is opinion. It's just obvious what the right thing to do here is. And I don't even mean grant him special inclusion. You don't have to give preferential treatment to Mike Leach. Just do away with your ridiculous 60% winning percentage number that is necessary for a head coach. You don't need it. is my point. Major League Baseball Hall of Fame voters do not have a minimum baseline of 300 as a batting average. But they understand in their minds, hey, that number, pretty significant. 500 home runs. No one ever wrote that down officially, but people just kind of among themselves decided, 500, it's pretty solid number that we can delineate great all-time power hitters versus really good ones. You don't have to write it down. It's just understood. If it's really that universal and that clear, it'll be understood. So I don't know exactly what the process here is. We were looking at the website today for the Hall of Fame. There was a number, and I love you guys too much to have called you live on the air. But I hope we get some movement on this because it's insane as it currently stands.